In the summer of 2003, I began filming the series Atheism, A Rough History of Disbelief. As part of the process, I talked to a number of writers, scientists, historians, and philosophers. Having secured their cooperation, I was very embarrassed to find that a large proportion of what went on ended up on the cutting room floor, simply because the series would have lasted 24 hours otherwise. Well, as it happens, the BBC agreed with me that the conversations were too interesting to be junked. And with these 6 supplementary programmes, they've made the extremely unusual decision to go back to the original material and to broadcast at length some of the conversations which I had. Conversations with people such as the English biologist Richard Dawkins, the American philosopher Daniel Dennett, the Cambridge theologian Dennis Turner, the American playwright Arthur Miller, the English philosopher Colin McGinn, and the American Nobel Prize-winning physicist Steven Weinberg. When I talked to the English philosopher Colin McGinn at his apartment in New York, we discussed at some length the meaning of the word belief, and much of that discussion is in the Atheism series. But to begin with, I just wanted to get from Colin a sense of what it felt like to be a sceptical English philosopher in a country as seemingly religious as the United States.
Sometimes Americans will say, so you don't believe in God? And I say, that's right, I don't believe in God. And they say, so do you believe in anything?
Oh, yes.
Do you believe in anything? And I say, I believe in many things, and I don't make jokes to them about I believe in tables and chairs. And I say to them, you know, I believe in various ethical causes and political ideas and other aesthetic values, intellectual values, lots of things that I believe in. And they say, that's all you believe in. I said, that's all I believe in. Don't you believe in something God-like? You don't believe in the traditional God. Don't you believe there's something there? And I say, no, there's nothing there. And it's very difficult to get across to people who are religious, when you're an atheist, you mean you don't believe in anything like that whatsoever. Mm. It's not that you think nature is God, or it doesn't have personal qualities, or something like that. You don't believe in anything of that type. Nothing supernatural, nothing miraculous, nothing superstitious, no ghosts, no telepathy, you know, nothing of that kind. That's what it's to do with. It's not that I'm picking on God, you know, somehow, or picking on the Christian God and not believing in him. It's just nothing of that type. And that's
well, but don't you then get the answer which I get from people who are not necessarily religious? I mean, they don't belong to either or any of the 3 monotheistic religions. They will say, not just simply, there must be something, to which I would give the same reply as you, but where do you get your spirituality?
Yeah, I suppose.
It sounds as if otherwise there's a shortage of some sort, but I've never been able to get from them whether it's like some vitamin deficiency.
Exactly. What do they mean by that? I mean, spiritual. Can an atheist be spiritual? I guess it's a matter of definition, really. I mean, it certainly can't be if it connotes anything supernatural, but you know, aesthetic and ethical values can approximate to what people call the spirit. You know, your most deeply held beliefs about human behaviour might be counted as spiritual, I don't know. Your feelings about nature, I suppose, might be. I mean, I wouldn't use the word. It doesn't seem to me to be a good word to use, a risky word to use, but it doesn't mean you don't have, any deep views about things, or deep convictions about things.
Well, but often people feel I always say the clergyman crouching in the laurel bushes leaps out and says, your deep feelings are, in fact, unacknowledged acknowledgements of the God you deny.
Yeah, well, one of my deep feelings is that there is no God, and it's a bad idea to believe in God, and it's been very harmful. So if that reflects my belief in God, well, that's a strange situation. That's one of my deepest convictions, is there is no God.
Now, I happen to share Colin's conviction that there is no God. And in my case, I never believed it. So I wondered if there had ever been a time in Colin's earlier life when he did believe in God.
Well, with me, it was actually quite precisely delineated. It was, I can't remember the exact dates now, the exact times, but I think I was about 17 or 18 when the idea of believing in God, and it was Christianity that I was exposed to, became real to me. And it went on for about a year, I would say. Not much more than that. If you'd said to me when I was 10, "What, do you believe in God?" I probably would have said yes, I don't know. But it didn't mean anything. It was just sort of, you know, everybody does, don't they? I mean, like the cows, you know, everybody believes in them, right? So it went, but then I actually started studying the Bible because I was studying Divinity A-level. So I started studying it, but we had a very charismatic teacher, an admirable man, Mr. Marsh, who I wrote about in my autobiography, who was very enthusiastic, and he was teaching us the Bible, and I was having to learn the Bible, studying it closely, you know, it's like Old Testament, New Testament. So I know much more about the New Testament than most Christians now, and even now, 25 years later, I know more about it than most religious people. So I actually know it pretty well. It's what got me interested in philosophy. So at the same time I was getting interested in philosophy, it was through thinking about religion, studying the Bible. And I think there were two factors, a confluence of two factors here. One was the interest in metaphysical questions, basic questions about the universe. How, you know, what's it all about? What does it all mean? That kind of question. And on the other hand, there was an ethical component to it, because you find in the New Testament, obviously, a very strong emphasis on ethical aspects of life. I was an idealistic teenager, you know, and it was in the 60s, so that had a profound impact on me, the ethical side. And I was not brought up in a house where ethical ideas were particularly discussed, or, you know, and it still has a profound impact on me, the ethical side of it. So those two things, I think, made me think there was more to life than the mundane realities that I'd been used to, living up there in Blackpool, you know, with the amusement arcades and the pubs and fish and chip shops, you know, and the freezing cold. And there was this idea of philosophical thought, metaphysical ideas, and then these high ethical ideals. A good combination, right? A good combination. So I got interested in it, and so for a period I was influenced by that. And I went to university studying psychology. And since I stopped studying the Bible, I wasn't seeing Mr. Marsh anymore for our divinity lessons. I kept it up a bit, and then occasionally would talk to people about religion, and it just sort of disappeared. And I remember going out, I remember sort of trying hard to keep up with it, going to some sort of religious meeting, and I just was sitting and listening to it. I thought, this is a load of rubbish. I just don't think this is true anymore. And then I was reading Bertrand Russell, Why I'm Not a Christian, and in I don't remember the details, but in a pretty short time I just decided it was all wrong. And I also decided you could keep the ethical side and the philosophical side and jettison the rest. So Russell represented to me an alternative to religious idealism. It was a more, you know, it was a secular idealism. So I realized you could have some of the aspects of religion which appealed to me, you could have without religion. And the bits that didn't appeal to me, like, you know, the virgin birth, miracles, strange ideas about how the universe came around, the sort of bits it's very hard to believe, you could just cut those bits off and you could keep the good bits. So you get rid of the theological baggage of religion, and then you keep the sides of it that you like. And that's what I have done ever since. Basically the same thing.
Was there any crisis in, as it were, unhitching the metaphysical and divine from the ethical to which you continue to subscribe?
Not in my case, which is, I think it differs from other people's case. In Russell's own description of his fall from theism, he describes it as a deeply painful, traumatic, irrecoverable episode. He spent his whole life somehow dealing with it. Not with me. It was relatively easy. It just happened quite naturally. As I say in my autobiography, it's like shedding the skin when, you know, the skin comes off and you have a new skin and it seems fine.
Was there a sense of relief as you shed the skin?
No, I wouldn't say there was relief. I think there was disappointment.
Ah.
I would like religion to be true. I'd like it to be true, because I'd like there to be immortality. I'd like there to be rewards for those who've been virtuous and punishments for those who've not been virtuous. Especially the punishments would be good. You know, there's no justice in this world, and it would be good if there was some cosmic force that distributed justice in the proper way that it should be. And it still is, to me, a constant source of irritation and pain that wicked people prosper and virtuous people don't. So there was a bit of disappointment.